Let's see if this works on YouTube. I don't know what's going on here. It acts a little wonky. All right. Hey, everyone. Genome here. Come at you with the next episode of Grader's Notes. And I should be a little more... There we go. See, a little more up on it. I'm over here watching my other screen to see if this is actually streaming or not, because I'm having a little bit of issue with what I had previously scheduled. So just bear with me for a moment.
It is streaming.
Oh, it is streaming? All right. Well,
yes.
Thank you very much. I have a voice from above there. So thank you very much, Roger.
Sure.
So this is Grader's Notes, the bi-weekly show where we take a look at comics of yore and see if they hold up to our lofty expectations. These might be a grail. These might be a personal grail or favorite. And oh, sorry, hold on. I got an echo here and gone. And we just want to see if they actually hold. They cut mustard, as they used to say. For instance, we did Hulk 181, very iconic book, but we don't just look at the cover. We don't just look at the fact that, hey, it's the first appearance of somebody. We go over the entire book and, just see, like I said, if it's worthy of its mantle. So without further rambling from me, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my illustrious cast tonight. First off, coming at you from the deep, dark South, we have none other than the ambassador of the comic book community, Mr. Metarog. Metarog, say hi to the people, will you?
Hey, greetings everyone. Great to be here again on Grader's Notes and deep diving into one of the actually this is one of the last series that I picked up before I gave up New Comics. So I'm very excited for tonight's episode.
All right, this is it's sure to be a good time, I'm telling you right now. Let's see, who else do we have here? Let's get this down to here. So next up from the cold white north, we have none other than Mr. Miracle, the king of what is the unknown spec. Mr. Miracle, say hi to the people out there today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dave's channel. Welcome to Grader's Notes, the only safe place to gather today. Right? So we're going to get together and we're going to talk about comic books, Galaxies of Guardians of the Galaxy, #1. So that's going to trip me up all night, is that Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm terrible with that one. It's like a tongue twister for me. Anyway, super excited. This was certainly something. We'll just say that. Okay. And we'll go with what's going to go.
Delicious piece of 90s goodness is what it is. But without further ado, let's go ahead and figure out who our pinch hitters tonight. And it's none other than Mr. Unruly Simeon. He's filling the void. Mr. Kenneth is out there working hard today, doing a man's work out there, doing remediation and stuff. So I don't think he's going to be able to come. If he does pop in, I will bring him right in there. But in the meantime, he is ably being replaced right now with Mr. Unruly Simeon. I don't know where you're even coming from today. Are you traveling again, Unruly?
Yeah, I'm still in Fort Myers till weekend after next, and I'm starting a job in Atlanta. And as horrible as the traffic in Atlanta is, oh my God, I hate South Florida. I know there's plenty of us down here that on YouTube that just love it, but I ain't one of them.
Well, it's a tough sell sometimes, I know. I used to travel for work, and not so fun. So let me go ahead and get this out to... Bam, there we go.
We don't have a lot of people in the chat right now. Was there another open stream maybe?
I'm looking right now. I'm going to go over there and check. I should not have scheduled it on StreamYard. As soon as I did that, something really weird happened with YouTube. So let me just go over there and check real fast.
Okay.
Please bear with us as I work through my technical difficulties here.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I got the notifications popped up for me.
Okay.
It didn't for me. I had to dig into your channel to find it.
Let's see. There's two of them here. One of them shows live. The other one says live now. I don't know. Interesting, but they can pick one of them. One of them will work. Let me see if I can.
Steve says he was in another one with nobody in it.
Yeah. Let's see. There's 0 in this one over here. I'll put a note in it real fast, and we'll get started.
Okay. Because I know a few people on the roundup told me that they were going to be on here. Super Russ, Mark Knapp, a few others. So.
All right, so message posted. And I think we are ready to go. So we're going to give people a few minutes to wander on in. In the meantime, we'll just go ahead and say hello to everyone. Roger, if you'd be so kind, you're the best at this.
Yeah. Well, the only person we got in here is I Love Disney and Comics, Steve, from over there in Ohio. And I really like his channel, too, because he's one of your guys. He's an ex-military guy, Genome.
Oh, really?
And, he had this great video on how to shall we say, how to become sanitary with only one sheet of toilet paper. That is a must-see video, guys. You have to search it out. I was like rolling on the floor when I saw that one.
I keep thinking of like there's a scene in Red Dwarf where they're talking about toilet paper. He's like, you only need 3 sheets, 1 up, 1 down, 1 to tidy up.
Well, that's not far from that video, but you got to go see it. And anyway, it was hilarious. It was hilarious. So thanks for being here, Steve. We appreciate your patronage, shall we say?
Yeah.
But
So
that's the only person we got right now.
that's pretty weak. I don't know.
Yeah,
What's
something's
going on
up.
here?
Something's up. Something's up.
What's going on?
I don't know.
Something's up.
Which
But-
I'm gonna
the
give
show
Kenny a
must go
12
on.
head. You think it's him?
I have to do it on someone else's channel.
Well, I announced it on, and the roundup put your link on there and everything, and everybody said yeah. So hopefully that they followed instructions. So.
I don't see.
We
anybody
know
else.
everybody's home.
I don't know. I don't think anyone
Yeah,
else is
that's right.
right now either.
You know
so.
everybody's home. That's right. So,
Let's see. Oh,
Hey,
interesting. But we-
Gino, what's the longest you ever went without taking an actual shower when you were in?
Probably. Well, not counting when I was in the field. Like we spent like 6 days straight out in the field, so you just take a little whore bath with some friggin' wet naps or whatever, and then. But yeah, probably about 6 days. And then when I was in Kuwait, I think we went 4 or 5 days without showering because the water trucks couldn't get through, and we were pretty ripe. It was 110 degrees out there in tents and all that. So, yeah. We figured we'd be full of viewers tonight. What else they got to do, you know? But
right. Well,
I think that's a testament to my channel. So anyway, I guess we can't hold up too long because you guys have lives to get to. So once again, tonight's book is this fancy background, as Dave says behind me. That's the green screen option is on StreamYards now. So I just already had the green screen up anyway, so I just threw it behind me. But it's the same as the cover of our book this evening, Guardians of the Galaxy #1. I picked this up off the newsstand back in the 90s when it first came out. Just like everybody else, I bought basically everything that came out that I could afford because it was just crazy back then, and they were relaunching titles like nobody's business too. This was, I think they came out at the same time as New Warriors,
Ghost Rider.
yeah, Ghost Rider, Sleepwalker, Darkhawk. I think all those were like
Darkhawk,
in the
yep.
same couple month period, so they had a real glut of either relaunches or new characters releases. And of all of them, these might have been the most obscure. They really didn't push them that hard back then, but they were actually pre-existing characters. A lot of these guys too, so it was interesting. I can't remember how long did this run go on. I kind of quit collecting
About
after like 10 issues.
60 or 70 issues. I don't recall right now. Yeah.
Had a fairly healthy run then.
Well, at least 5 years. I remember that much.
But so that was I decided to go with it, not just because of the movies and all that, but I was just going through my books and we've rattled a few off, and this one seemed to be the most popular from all of our august little group here. So tonight we're going to go ahead and start with what we usually do with the cover. Hey, Paulo Costa, good to see you in here.
Hey, Paulo.
Let's see. What's up? Oh, we're down to 3 now, man. We're just running out. We got more graders here than actual viewers. But anyway, we'll go ahead and start off with. Oh, let's just make this random. Metarog, how about you tell us a little bit about this cover this evening, and what score would you give this thing?
All right. Okay. So this, again, as Genome was saying, this is a cover. This is a comic that came out in 1990. I was at that point in college, and I couldn't get this initially because it was a pretty hot item. This and the Ghost Rider was a pretty hot items back then. And as being a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan, if you haven't noticed here, I have all their appearances. This is the original team of the Guardians of the Galaxy, by the way, not the rebooted team that went to the movies and so forth. And I found this cover to be pretty well done. And for this reason, first, it has kind of a textured look to it, almost like a semi-painted cover. And it also has all the characters on there in action poses. You got Charlie 27, you got Stakar, Starhawk, Alita, which is, they actually can't appear at the same time at this point, but they're both in the cover. You have Yondu, Vance Astro, Nikki, and Martinex over here. And notice that they're battling somebody that's over here on, I guess, my right, or forward thinking. And this a scene like this, except for the two characters, which is artistic license, does sort of occur in the comic. And I like the star field in the back. It's a little bit crowded, but again, they got all the characters on there and a pretty good size characters. There's nobody that's really tiny there. So for a first issue to put all the characters on a team of this size, and to put it with a planetary field, because it gives you that adventures in space, science fiction kind of vibe, and notice the projectiles and the readiness of all the characters. I thought this was pretty well done as far as striking your eye, as far as grabbing your attention. Of course, first cosmic issue. The trade dress is kind of boring. It's kind of like, I wish there was something maybe with a little more flair here. And then you have, of course, the explode into the Marvel universe of the 31st century. So that right there tells you that this is, apart from the regular Marvel universe in the 20th century. And it has a nice little patriotic star there. Of course, if you had a newsstand, I'm assuming that's the barcode. So overall, I think for a first issue, for displaying all the characters, for doing something that has action, not just a pose there smiling at you like a lot of modern comics. I do take away a little bit from the trade dress. You do also have all the characters in the little avatar box, which is kind of a cool throwback to the Bronze Age, which I like. So overall, I gave this a 4.
All right, 4. Excellent first going here for the cover. And yeah, I guess there's a question in there about who did the cover, and it was Jim Valentino.
Yes.
I forgot that he wrote these too, all of these too. So he's pulling his Byrne freaking phase, wasn't he, at the time?
Yeah.
So it's impressive. I'll say that much. All right, I guess I'll go ahead and next. I'm in the gate here. It's kind of changing things up a little bit. So let me reset my timer here, which is the sands of time. I thought it was somewhat fitting since I couldn't pull my clock up. Let's see. Here we go. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and actually share screen. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, Paulo knows his Guardians of the Galaxy. That's for sure, based on what he's putting on here. He knows about 86.
Yeah, he was like all over.
Villain. Yeah, pretty obscure villain, but yeah. Meteor, oh, you got your timely. Congratulations, Biggie. Congratulations. I'm sure it's in a video as we speak.
Hey, what are you doing, bud? He's frozen.
Did he freeze?
Look at him. Like, what are you doing? You're staring into the camera.
Frozen in the sands of time.
Hello.
Oh man. So yeah, the cover was done by Jim Valentino, and he did do the art and the writing. The inks were done by Steve Montano, and this was edited by Craig Anderson, and Tom DeFalco was the editor-in-chief back then here. And this is from June of 1990. And of course, the Guardians of the Galaxy started back in this issue here. Well, you can't see it, but started in Marvel Superheroes 18 back in the late 60s. Originally, it was just Martinex, Charlie 27, Yondu, and Vance Astro. Later on, they picked up Starhawk, and then much later on, they picked up Nikki. And they didn't have a regular series in the Bronze Age, but they did have a series in Marvel Presents that ran about 8 or 9 issues, I do believe, and that's where the majority of their concentrated stories happened. But they guest starred in Marvel Team Up, in Thor, and they were big. They were a very big part of the Avengers versus Korvac saga, and they also had a big sort of influence on the New Warriors, because Vance Astro is sort of a alternate timeline version of the New Warriors of this Fans Astra. So hopefully Genome will be back at some point because I'm running out of material here.
You never run out of material, Roger, man. You're the history book of comic books here, buddy. Like,
well, I just happen to love this team, Miracle, so that's why I know a little bit about
it.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. It just completely whited it out. I had to control it, delete it. I don't know what the heck was going on there. I'm not going to share screen now. I tried that, and as soon as I did, everything went white, Snow White. So I'll just hold it up like a civilized man, I guess. All right, let me go and pull this out of the wrapper. I hate to actually pull this out. It's actually in fairly good shape. I didn't realize it was as expensive as it was until Dave was for me.
I think I just, like, people were just drunk when they priced this one.
All right, let's try this one more time. All right, so the cover. This cover is kind of sneaky in a way. I didn't think I liked it as much as I did until I really took a look. I have not looked at this book in 30 years, since it came out. And there's a lot to like about this cover. I didn't realize. First thing that stuck out in my mind is look at all the angles and bends in the joints. The anatomy is done extremely well here. There's a lot of room for error and unnatural looking stuff. But even things like Yondu's fingers pulling the bow there are pretty accurate. Sorry, it's not focusing too well. Alita's got her leg bent up behind her there. It looks like a drop kick or the old Ninja Gaiden kind of jump kick thing. But I just, that was the first thing that stuck out to me is how well everyone is articulated. There's a lot of detail here, minimalist kind of inking, especially on Charlie over here, just the right amounts. Pretty good use of color. There's a faded look to this that kind of turns me off a little bit, but at the same time, it does allow for a lot of detail, and it doesn't look like gaudy. Like if you look at like Sleepwalker or something like that, another book around at the same time, it just looks kind of more childish looking just because of a lot of the color schemes they used and like the magical effects and all that. This just looks like a little more of an adult book. This is how you do a first issue. It's like, even though there's no villain, they're just fighting, page one basically. At least it shows them in action, and it gives you idea of what these people do. Okay, Yondu, he's an archer. This girl is obviously some sort of marksman, kind of a dead shot thing going on with that thing on her wrist, right? You got energy projection people up here. This guy's obviously the strong guy. This Iceman clone down there, well, you don't really know what he is, but looks like frost coming around his hands. So it's just a lot of cool stuff here. It's a very, very lush background too, with all these planets and nebulae and all that kind of floating around back there. Trade dresses, it's bearable, nothing exciting. Didn't bother me too much, really. They love doing cheesy stuff like this in the 90s, though. It was so goofy. But I don't know. It's just like everyone's face is well drawn, even though they're a little bit of a distance. This cover grew on me. Like I said, something about the color scheme turns me off just a little bit. It doesn't make it as good as it could be, but I think it's on purpose. It's muted. It looks like it's on another planet, with very little atmosphere, even though they're not wearing masks or anything. But I don't know. I really dig this cover. I'm going to give this cover a 4. It's just much better than I remembered it. And it's been in my long box for, like I said, 30 years. I just never really paid it much mind, But yeah, I'm going to give this a 4. It's a great cover.
Good score there, Genome. I agree.
4.
Obviously.
Yeah, that's right. You had the same one, didn't we? Yeah.
Yes, we did.
It was a 3.5. Like when I first looked at it from a distance and held it out, it was a little bit lower. I was like, it's not too exciting. And I got a little closer look at it. It's like there's a lot of good stuff going on here. So,
yeah, I agree. And I also like how the brightness of some of the characters comes through, and others you can tell they're kind of in a little bit of shadow. Some good attention to detail there.
There is there. So. I guess next up we're gonna have to go with Dave. He's just chomping at the bit to get going here, especially after I froze. So,
yeah.
All right, Mr. Miracle, lay your wisdom upon us.
All right, so cover. I don't mind Valentino's artwork. I don't. But this cover, I don't know. I don't know if you guys are seeing the same things I'm seeing. Some of these poses are really weird. Like maybe like you're talking about the bend, but I mean, there's way too much bends in some of these joints, and there's way too weird stuff. Like I don't want to harp on his anatomy too much, but there is some weird stuff going on anatomy wise. Not terrible, definitely not, so bad that it's like screwing with your head. But if you look deep, there is. pretty plain background, but that's okay because we got lots of guys on here. The Guardians of the Galaxy treatment, the title there, I like the way that one, I like the lettering on there. It's pretty good. Could pop a little more, kind of gets a little lost with the red. Other than that, it's a pretty typical first issue, everybody out on parade, all jumping into action, 90s cover. I mean, that's what they were. That's what they all were. If you look at the cover of the New Warriors, you just take all these guys and replace them with the New Warriors. There it is. Or whatever other 90s team happened to come out around the same time. So I'm not overly impressed with. It's just basically, ta-da, here's our #1 cover that we always do, just with these characters rather than those other characters you saw last week when we put out that other #1, because this is the 90s. There were #1s coming out every other week, if not every week. So that being said, some of the colors are good, some are not so great. These purple guys tend to disappear into the background, Alita and stuff there. It's hard to see because I'm doing it off screen. Yeah, I had a little bit of trouble getting a copy of this. And yeah, I thought it was pretty typical. I didn't hate the cover. I mean, I looked at it and right away I'm like, 90s comic, right? Like it's so atypical of that. Yeah, it was actually my favorite part of this book and the one that I gave the highest marks to. And yeah, 2.5.
Portent of things to come.
Yeah, that doesn't bode well.
So let's get this out and really. Sorry, I'm updating my record book here. So, all right. So we got a serviceable grade in the first one here of the night from Mr. Miracle. So now I have to see if the next grader can improve on that, or does it get even worse? So, Mr. Unruly Simeon, tell us what you thought about the cover of Guardians of the Galaxy #1.
Well, when I purchased this on Comixology about 3 hours ago, and I've read it twice. When I first saw it, I'm not at all impressed with this guy's pencils, and I can't draw a lick, so it always cracks me up when I critique other people's artwork. It's not horrible, but he's merely serviceable. But having said that, I think it's a decent cover. I do like all the characters being in the action pose. I'm a fan of the original Guardians. I don't remember them from the 60s, but Raj might remember they were reprinted in some Marvel magazine in the early to mid 70s, those same stories. And that's where 29. I read them. What?
Astonishing Tales 29.
Okay, yeah. And I always liked the idea of, the dude from the Jovian colony growing up under Jovian gravity. So they're huge people. But at any rate, the huge nit I had to pick with this is from my science fiction fandom. It's almost like the artist was like, all right, so we know this is space behind them. Look, I've got a blank spot here. I better throw in a red planet, or maybe that's a star. Here's another planet, a double-ringed gas giant. If you were living in a solar system where you could see that many planets from the surface of yours, you'd be undergoing some serious changes because your atmosphere would be being sucked away. There'd be all kind of issues. I mean, when you look up in the night sky, what do you see? The moon and the stars, and he should have left it at that. And I also got to admire his ability to take on drawing this team. Some of these costumes are pretty elaborate. Yondu, look at that shit, man. I'd hate to have to draw all that detail. My other major gripe is on the cover and on the interior, he never seems to have a really good grasp on Yondu's crest. But it grew on me. Amazingly enough, I was ready to pan this entire work, and the second time I read it, it kind of grew on me. I'd give this cover a solid 3.
Okay, fair point.
Well, it's a little better and serviceable. How about that? Solid 3.
Right.
Solid 3. They grew on you just like mold.
Or certain viruses we will not name.
Yeah, which we won't mention anymore tonight.
Did you know that after I did that virus that will not be named live streaming the other night. The CDC put a link on my YouTube page at the video.
For real?
They did. Oh, my goodness. I'm being watched now. So, hey, it's time to turn the grading over this cover to the most important grader of the evening, and that is you in the chat. So, whenever it strikes your fancy, go ahead and throw your scores out there. Remember, we go on 0.5 metrics, so 1, 1.5, 2, that sort of thing. So, go ahead and put your scores in now, and we'll see how they line up. In the meantime, we'll do some rapid on this cover.
Yeah, I think that, definitely Simeon has some good points. And when I saw this cover, and again, you have to sort of take it as you can't take it as a realism, because again, Starhawk and Alita are on there, but they can't be because they share the same body. But I think the artist wanted to demonstrate, what kind of team it is, all the members, and the fact that they work in space. Okay, so that is why we have such an elaborate star field and nebulae and celestial bodies. That is, of course, super exaggerated, but that is, I think, on purpose to demonstrate the type of team we're talking about. And maybe it took it a little too far, but yeah, I think that's why it's there.
Earth's in space too, right? Like you don't look outside and like see massive planets in the background.
Now, part of this too is
but we don't work in space typically.
Yeah. We have an atmosphere too. If we didn't have the atmosphere, we'd see a lot more than we do.
Still wouldn't see
that.
You still wouldn't see like Jupiter all enlarged on there.
No, you wouldn't. You're right. You're right.
Planets are far. Like you think, like you get that Hitchhiker's Guide from the Galaxy. You think, space is really big. It's a lot bigger than you think. You think it's far down to the corner store. And when we're talking about space, like it's huge. It's like
you're right. You're right.
Big.
You're right.
Yeah,
it was. That's why I'm saying it's and empty mostly. You're right. That's what I'm saying. But who wants to see an empty background? So that's why I think he's making it a little more elaborate, just to give it a little more oomph, but not realism oomph. It's more of, hey, this is what this team is based on, oomph.
And he's gonna do I got to do some illustrated stuff to make it look cool. Because honestly, if he just had a black background with a bunch of little white flecks, it's not cool, right? Like, so he wants to be artist, wants to be an artist and draw. He wants to draw planets. He wants to draw stuff in the background, right? Which, okay, I'll wait on that one.
Okay. Genome, you want me to sound off here?
Give me 1 second. Let me get a calculator pulled up here.
I think we have 1, 2, 3, we have 4. Hey, Bake, if you want to put in a grade for the cover that you see there, feel free. And Paolo, I don't think we got a grade from you. If you would like to participate in the grading aspect, we would, of course, appreciate that. But you don't have to, of course.
Give you about 30 more seconds.
Biggie Shack says, not shabby.
Oh, no, not shabby at all.
Not shabby.
Like I said, I didn't like this cover when it first came out, and so I just never really gave it a second glance, but it's definitely, I'm really right, it grew on me a lot.
I think.
Hey, Tim.
Tim's in the house. Welcome, Tim. Good to see you.
I think I liked this comic at first glance. The cover at first glance better than I liked it once I kind of took a better look at it. I was like, wait a minute, it seems weird.
The only thing I can't figure out is something about the colors are just muted. I don't know if they did it on purpose. Yeah. It has this washed look to it, which I'm not.
Yeah, it's almost like he wanted to mimic like a painted cover, almost give it a little different texture, like a washout.
I don't know. You can hardly see Alita at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right, and she's in a weird pose.
Yeah. Now the colors should have been brighter in some aspects, but I still think though that he did a good job with the shading. But I don't know if that was in the printing process or if that was in his. I mean, Dave, maybe you know more than that, or if this was in because you draw it, but you don't necessarily attribute the exact color scheme. That has to be sort of initiated by the colorist, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have like the color guy that does it. I mean, the artist does have like a say in kind of how it is. Plus, the characters already have their costumes and colors and that established from other artists beforehand, right?
Yeah.
But when you go to printing, the printer's definitely going to say, oh, if you want this tone yellow, that's going to be more, right? Like it's because that's an uncommon color, or we have to use more cyan with that or whatever, right? So it could be a cost thing where they're limited. Like, okay, you got to use like canary yellow and friggin' cadmium red, and that's it, right?
A little phthalo blue. I feel like I'm watching Bob Ross here.
Well, Genome, I think it's a 3.5 average if my math is correct.
Yep, that's what I came up with too. 3.375. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and round that up to 3.5. So kind of right between Unruly and both yours and I. So
yep.
So 3.5. So better than serviceable, better than average.
Better than serviceable. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Let's see. Let me get this cleared off here.
Does Dave like this book? If he does, I'm leaving. Don't leave then, because 2.5 was the highest grade, and that was the cover.
Yeah. So this does
stick
not bode well.
Yeah, stick around, because there's going to be fireworks coming real soon.
So let's go ahead and. Oh, was that Dave? Go ahead.
People prefer it when I don't like the comic.
Oh, they like to watch you get fired up. I need to make another greatest hits video, but we haven't talked about a McFarlane book, so.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a Liefeld McFarlane week or something, and then it'll be on then. So let's go ahead and step away from the art just a little bit and talk about the nuts and bolts of the book, and that's the story. This is the first issue. It's kind of introducing the 90s speculator comic collector, mostly casual comic collector, to a pretty obscure team. So they got their work cut out for us. For them. So I guess we'll go ahead and start this with Dave. What was your thoughts upon the words written within? I have a feeling this is going to be fiery.
Well, man, the dialogue is really thin, for one thing. Like, these guys are blah, blah, blah. This guy is like the Michael Bay of friggin' comic book writers, I can tell you that much. Look how many explosions he wrote into this thing. Let me just say boom every time I come across an explosion. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, a couple pages. No, they're not fighting. Oh, boom, 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 boom. Like, come on, man. It's enough. I'm not even halfway through the book. Like, stop it. And then he does the typical, like, I like that he started out action-wise. I'm like, all right, these guys are fighting they're fighting some autonomous guns that they seem to be having a lot of trouble with. So that doesn't bode well with my idea of how strong this team might end up being, right? Like, first off, I'm like, okay, they have a lot of trouble with guns. And then, and robots. And then all of a sudden, like, they're just, let's go back and let's talk about everybody. And then we hit right away, first issue-itis, right? Let's have a recap of who everybody is and what everybody does and what their power is and what the relationship to one another are. And that's fine, because these guys are pretty obscure, right? At this point, the Guardians of the Galaxy, they had like Marvel Comics Presents, right? That was kind of their show from issue 3 for a while. They had that one, right?
Marvel
Presents. Yeah, Marvel Presents.
Yeah.
And so they were in that for a while. They were also, spontaneously in other people's books, right? And so they weren't super known, right? In the 90s, they had kind of gone by the wayside. They, again, like, some of the characters showed up once in a while, but when did you see Alita since Marvel Presents? Never, right? Like, so they're trying to bring these guys back, and then they bring in Taserface, which is, yeah, if you look on the front page in the credits of like all the artists and stuff, there's a little side note over there, Taserface created by someone else, right? Not me. It's basically, the guy's like, oh, I thought it was being cool, but it's a good thing. And see, Taserface created by Aaron Valentino rather than Jim Valentino, right? Must be his brother. And I would have put that on there too. Like, I didn't come up with that guy, but I'll use him, right? Like, Taserface in this book could have been anybody. Could have named him anything, given him any costume. It's not weird, but that name, I didn't like it when I heard it in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was glad that James Gunn made fun of that name, because it's such a 90s, like such a 90s friggin' character name, like so many other characters, like just Taserface. Damn it. The dialogue, I said, is weak. The characters tend to seem like they're at one moment friends, and next moment they're arguing, and another moment they're friends. The only character that's in the movies that is in this is Yondu, and technically he wasn't a Guardian in any of the movies. I mean, technically maybe he was a little bit, but so if you're expecting to come in here and see Groot and Rocket Raccoon and Drax the Destroyer, no, that's not happening, right? So that's not the team. And I think, you know, James Gunn very specifically did not pick these characters because, yeah, they're a little, right? I don't know why you would really want to bring this back, and especially bring back with a character like Taserface. Like, immediately you're setting your comic book up to be more comic, like, what am I trying to say? Like, more jovial, more comic-y, right? Than trying to, you know, make any kind of a serious book, other than, you know, the Michael Bay explosions everywhere. And, you know, we have a recap of the entire history of the Guardians of the Galaxy as well. So there, yeah, we go from first issue-itis to being some sort of a bunch of odd stuff with this Taserface guy that seems to be almost invulnerable, to back to first issue-itis. Writing on this book, I almost gave it a 2, but then I read that name again, Taserface, so I gave it a 1.5.
Oh, oh man.
Lower score by name. I like it. I like it a lot. 1.5. All right, so we got a well below serviceable from Mr. Miracle there for the story. Obviously, it wasn't his cup of tea, so we'll have to see if Mr. Unruly Simeon agrees with him. Sir, what do you think about the inner dialogue and the writing on this book?
Well, you know, I noticed that too, that Taserface was created by presumably Jim Valentino's brother. But you know what? When the movie came out, I'm betting he got just a little bit of coin for that. So, you know, maybe that backfired on Jim, having to acknowledge that his brother created this doofy character. All right, look, I don't mind the recap. You know, when Marvel reprinted the original Guardian, I love the concept. I love that they were from different colonies: Mercury, Pluto, Jupiter, and isn't Vance from Earth, I believe. And they were the last surviving people from these colonies, you know. That to me is that's a great scientific sci-fi idea. I had no idea who this broad is, and I never heard of Altura before. So, and I didn't mind. Normally the recap, you know, which takes up a good part of the middle when Yondu's having his vision and sharing it, and they're recapping all the various adventures they had in other Marvel titles. You know, I didn't know all that. I needed the refresher. So for once, I didn't mind that. But yeah, the dialogue is weak. This, you know, it's not showing off anything to me. And if you do a blooper reel, you got to do that last bit of Miracle going boom, boom, boom. But what I did like, the one thing that would have definitely made me, I wasn't reading comics at this point, or not. I stopped getting brand new comics in like 90, 91. And at that point, I think Sal Buscema's run on Avengers was done. So that was the only Marvel title on my pull list in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. So I was totally unaware of this book. But, and at one point, one of them says something about noticing that Taserface's armor kind of looks like Iron Man. It must have been Vance, I guess. The one redeeming feature of this book, which I would have definitely made me buy the next issue, was the reveal of that he is a member of the Stark. And so obviously that's got to be, in this reality, some kind of convoluted, you know, they're the inheritors of Tony's, you know, technology, maybe. I don't know. That would have kept me coming back for more. But listen, you know, I grew up with comics in the 70s, and this reminds me all too much of a 70s comic. And not in a good way. I mean, there were so many advances made at both the Marvel and DC in the 80s as far as sophisticated storytelling and being pushed by some of the really good indies that came out then. The handful of comics I've read that are from the 90s have not impressed me at all. But overall, I would this is serviceable. I'd give it a 2.5. I would have bought the next issue.
Fair points.
2.5, 2.5.
Yeah,
Some very astute observations there. The ending does make you want to buy the next one. At least it does to me, anyway. So, Dave, he'd probably use this for kindling, but we'll see if Roger agrees. So, Minorog, what do you think about the inner dialogue and this Tolstoy-worthy writing within?
Well, I wouldn't go. It's not War and Peace, that's for sure. But listen, yeah, you have to put things into perspective. Everything has to have. Nothing occurs in a vacuum, right? So you have to look at the perspective, and this sort of ties into the concept also, right? But this is not a prose heavy. This is not something that is supposed to stimulate the inner cerebellum. Okay, this is an action based comic book, and the reality is that is its main thrust and concept. So when you look at it, it's very art driven. I mean, there's lots of booms, there's lots of explosions. You have the intro, like, and I think both of you sort of said, hey, well, that's kind of okay because these characters have been on hiatus for, I think, at least, close to a decade, except for a few guest appearances and so forth, and so you get a sense that they are a team, but they were sort of a team that was thrown together because of the uniqueness of who they are, right? Yeah, there's like big kaboom there, right? They were thrust together because there was an invasion, and they happened to be the strongest and only survivors of their world. So they came together because they had a commonality. Okay, they were all orphans looking for a belongingness and also a purpose. And this comic sort of exemplifies that they're trying to. They're on a quest here, okay? And this comic is to a good degree a setup, okay? It talks about why they're there, even though they give you kind of mushy details because they themselves don't know. We're sort of being taken along on a ride where we don't know what the destination is yet, okay? They're there because they're trying to find a shield, which is Captain America's shield. So that takes you back to the 20th century, right? Why do they want to find it? Because in Yondu's faith book, like consider that his Bible, this is an item of power, an item that will explain a lot about what it is that is happening right now. But there's another team that's out there trying to find it, and they're one step ahead. So what they're trying to do is to get there quicker and find out who that team is so that they can beat them to that, because if that other team gets that item, then they're no longer, then they can't answer the questions which they're trying to find out. And in fact, when they land on this planet, they're attacked because one of the members looks apparently like a member of that other team. Okay, there's a lot of intrigue here. There's a lot of subplot setups. Yeah, the dialogue is not the best. It's pretty basic. But there's this great here and recap of pretty much all their appearances, from Marvel 2-in-1 to Defenders to what I mentioned, Thor Annual, what you see here to the right, and their Avengers. It tells you that everything that they did in the 20th century has been very critical, and that's why that shield is, if it survived, is essential to their going forward as a team and the thrust of their goal. So I think it's a little deeper than you guys maybe give it credit for. Yeah, the dialogue is not the best. It's fairly basic. It's sometimes a little bit. Taserface is the dumbest name I've ever heard for a villain. But again, I don't know if this was his brother, his son, but whatever. the armor, the designs of the I know this is a story, but the designs of the armor at this point and that big reveal at the end make, to me, I couldn't wait for the next month because I'm a big Iron Man fan, and I knew that there was a tie-in to the 20th century in the comics that I loved from the Bronze Age. So I couldn't wait for the next issue. So yeah, it's not a prose or story driven at this point. It's a setup issue with a lot of subplots, a lot of intrigue. I gave it a lot higher score than you guys because I think that it's pulling you toward a conclusion that I think is going to be good at this point. Okay, so I gave the story a 3.5.
3.5 from Roger. Excellent dissertation there. Actually, that's took me longer than that to read the book. So
sorry about that.
No, you're fine. No, everyone likes to hear what you have to say about it because you come from a knowledgeable base. So I'll see if I can at least do your score justice. So 3.5. That's a pretty decent marks there for something that got pretty low scores from everybody else. But let's see what I say about it. Let me reset the sands of time here and go for it. So the story. Okay, it's a number one. Well, let's do a little more backstory here. Genome 1990. I've been collecting comics for about 3 years at that point. Hardcore for about 2 years at that point. So I was 14 years old at the time. So I have never even heard of these guys before. This is my very first run-in with them. So this book does an excellent job of telling you who these guys are and what their motivations are. I can really dig that. Most of the time, I can't stand when they go over the power set of the characters. Don't do that for X-Men. Everyone knows what Cyclops does. Everyone knows what Wolverine does. Even if you're not a big comic book reader, you just know. They had their own cartoons, for goodness sake. So this book does a pretty good job with it, and it's not too obtrusive. They get it over with pretty quick. There is a bit of a bog down the middle when they're going through backstory. That's either a boon or a bane. I kind of liked it once again because I didn't know anything about these characters, so I kind of appreciated they went through that much trouble of, giving some backstory to these people because, and like I said earlier, they were really obscure. So that was kind of nice. There's a lot of intrigue and mystery in this book. Okay, they bring up Iron Man, they bring up Captain America, they're talking about time travel, obviously. What's going on these planets they keep visiting? What are they looking for? There's a lot of little fish hooks they throw out there to try to bait you in, and I can dig on that as well. It's like when you have books like New Warriors #1, we did that one a year ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a fetch quest to get the new people. There was nothing given about the people at all. A little bit about Night Thrasher, just a tiny bit, but very, very, very sparse on details. And so it was bland, boring, and atypically 90s, for a first issue. This one went a little farther with it. And who is Alita and Starhawk? I mean, that seems really cool. One of them can't be around because they're basically body swapping with each other, And Starhawk is all aloof, and he seems super powerful. He gets blasted out by Taserface early in this one. Just a lot to like here. The dialogue is a little wooden and stiff at times. And of course, they fall into the trap a little bit of announcing their power before they use it. I'm going to freeze his head. We can see you're going to freeze his head, okay? But at least they go with a quantifier, so he can't get oxygen, right? So there's a good villain who's got the stupidest name since Killdozer, but I don't know. It's cool. It's a good fight. It's a team fight where they all have to come together and beat an exceptionally strong foe because none of them can seem to do it on their own, right? And they finally down them, and all of a sudden, bam, at the end, there's 5 or 6 of them standing out there. It's these guys are in trouble. So even if it wasn't Iron Man brought up, you might just buy the next issue to see what happens to these guys. How are they going to survive this, I don't know. Yondu, I wonder if they base on, I don't know if any of you guys here watch Farscape, but she's the Blue Priestess lady. And I wonder if she was based on Yondu, because he's got the crying Native American from the 70s commercials on here kind of vibe to him, doing his rituals in the smokehouse and all that, and or the lodge, should I say. And it's just interesting. So they take the backstory and turn it into a Vision Quest kind of thing, which is, I don't know, it's hokey but cool. I don't know. One thing I didn't like about this book is there's almost too much dialogue. There's dialogue, and then there's word panels everywhere. There's not an empty panel to be had here. It doesn't have dialogue in it. And sometimes you just need an action panel or a movement panel, So it does get bogged down a little bit by excessive wordiness, and most of it's not too thrilling, but I don't know. I gave it decent marks. I gave it 3.5 as well. It does a really good job of hooking the reader in, I think, to want to read a little bit more about these guys, and it does an excellent job of reintroducing the characters to a public who probably doesn't know who they are for the most part. So, it's pretty bland and banal in a lot of ways, but I think in a lot of ways that count, as in recurring sales, I think they did a fairly good job with it. So I give that a 3.5 as well.
3.5. Incorrect.
Oh boy.
So now we'll have to turn the grading over to the chat and see what they think of the story. Especially if you've read it, let us know in the chat your grades while we sit here and rap about the story.
There was one thing in here I really liked where they called. I'm sorry, man. I wish I had a book to flip through.
But yeah, I don't have it either. Wait.
What are you looking for?
Martinez, when they referred to him as a Pluvian.
Right.
I guess that's how you refer to a native of Pluto. I did not know that.
Didn't either.
It's not Plutian, it's Pluvian. Yes.
Yeah, Pluvian.
Pluvian. Yeah.
I thought that was a cool idea as well, like having them all from different colonies, like the last survivors of every colony. It was really cool to have the inner solar system ones, and Yondu being like the far one out there. But you got Jupiter, even Mercury's there. For some reason, they're fast and least.
But that's not Valentino's idea.
No.
No.
That was established.
Yeah, that was from Marvel Presents.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool too how they had what's the deal with Vance Astro? Why is he in this armor? Is he a prisoner in this armor? Can he get out of it? That was kind of another mystery builder for me too.
Yep.
I was like, does he want to be in this suit, or is he kept alive artificially? He doesn't want to be there. I thought that was kind of cool too.
You also get an idea of like some relationships because none of them seems to really trust Starhawk. And Martinek and Charlie 27 and Nikki have a thing going on because he was like, "Hey, I'm alone with you." He goes, "Hey, don't you remember the burns I gave you last time?" I thought that was kind of a cool little throw in there.
No, and the character Yondu, like getting a little more of his backstory was nice. So I do like Yondu, and it was nice that they kind of hung a lantern on it and talked about what a big connection they have to the 20th century. Like, oh, look at how much we happen to connect to the 1990s.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth with that. I know he gets the shield later on. I think he gets out of that armor for a while. There's that band of Punishers that winds up like it's crazy how much they tie in back with the 20th century again.
Well, of course they had to tie them to the 20th century. These characters couldn't stand on their own. They needed Captain America and Thor to help them out, get comic book sales.
Yeah, almost every one of the major characters, Wolverine's legacy shows up. A lot of like you said, Thor's, I guess, and the future self comes out. Ghost Rider. There's all kinds of
Cosmic Ghost Rider.
all kinds of later incarnations of 20th century characters. Because again, as Dave was saying, they otherwise you're like, who's that? You have to have some kind of relationship that you can have a tie-in to. And they did have some original villains. They even had one from the Universal Truth Church of Truth from the Starlin era. That showed up again. So they had a lot going on later on.
The Marvel Presents stories were pretty good, I thought. I mean, if I'm remembering them right, I haven't read that in a while, but I thought it was better written than this.
They were pretty good. Yeah, I agree. All right, you ready, Genome? I think we got everything in.
Yep, hold on. I'm doing the math as we speak. It's
you're
easy.
already doing it. Okay.
There's only a few of them, so it's easy.
I don't even need to read it off. Yeah, looks like around 3-ish or so to me.
So yeah, it's right there at 3. Seems pretty fair. Another thing I noticed is does Marvel Boy Vance Astro ever even earn a spot on a team for any reason? He sucks in New Warriors. What the hell does he do in this book but get knocked out like a couple times? He never does anything.
No.
Well, he's not Marvel Boy here. He's Vance Astro.
I know, but I mean, it's the same dude. But
once he gets the shield and he sort of metamorphosized a little bit, he does become a little more important. His telekinetic blast at this point, and he's also the 20th century, historian, which has some value on this quest. So.
There's such a convoluted backstory to all these characters.
Yeah, I mean, because they have. This is kind of like what happens when the characters are fairly obscure, and they appeared over such a long period of time, but very few times.
Right.
That
So
those
each writer kind of
yeah, exactly.
it.
They don't have a coherent kind of universe that they're part of. It's sort of all different takes, and that's kind of a hard thing to follow up on. Yeah.
This kind of ties in with the writing. Who's y'all's favorite character? Solo favorite character of all these people?
Of this group?
Yeah, I like
Yondu.
Martin X. You like Yondu?
Yeah.
I'm down with you, Gino. Martin X has always been my favorite.
I actually like Charlie 27 myself.
He's got kind of a Ben Grimm thing going on there.
He's got a Ben Grimm kind of thing. He's a no-nonsense guy, a military guy. He's a strategist. He's like, get it done. He's like, let's not mess around. You guys are just, you guys don't go over there. You come over here. Let's tackle a situation. He's that kind of take charge kind of guy, which I respect.
Nice.
Let me move on here. We'll say goodbye to somebody.
Who
We'll get on to.
who created the Guardians of the Galaxy, Roger?
That's a good question. Let me see who did that.
But Apollo, he knows all about these guys.
I'm not sure. I don't know if this was Roy Thomas or if this was Stan Lee.
I would bet Roy, but I'm not sure either.
It's pretty early, Roy.
The initial, it says here. Yep, Roy Thomas is the associate editor, and Stan Lee was the editor. So Stan Lee had very little to do with it. So I bet this was Roy. This smacks of Roy Thomas to me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not totally sure. Yeah.
I can't
Maybe
remember
Paulo knows.
from reading some of the other books. It's been so long. Didn't like Vance Astro's like kinetic abilities? Didn't they hurt him in the future because they got stronger or something? Didn't they like give him extreme pain when he used them or something? I seem to remember that being in there somewhere.
There was a time, yeah, where it did give him like a big headache and all this, and yeah, that's true. But he's the ultimate kind of like not. It's sort of like he's like doesn't make any difference because he left Earth to go to another planet, and by the time he got there were Earthlings already there for 200 years. So he's like, what the heck did I do with my life here?
He's a Cap fanboy, he always has been. Yeah, he just he needs a little personality of his own. I do like his costume in this one. It looks kind of like a cross between the In-Betweener and his old costume. But
yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to what I assume Dave is not going to enjoy grading, and that would be The Art Within. Hey, look who just showed up there. Welcome, Matt. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, I seem to remember that. Maybe it was.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I don't know. Something just pictured him in my mind of him hemorrhaging or something. But anyway, all right. Let's go on to the interior story. So on this one, I think we'll have Unruly just lead us off, or not interior story, interior art. So Unruly, what do you think about the pencils, inks, and colors within? Was this worthy of beyond serviceable, or is this below the par as it shows?
Well, I hate, like I said about the cover, I hate to rag on the guy. I wish I could draw this good. If my pencils were this serviceable, I'd be trying to do this for a living. But I think comics have always been, in my experience, as far as consistent interior art, sort of like pitchers in the major league or quarterbacks. There just ain't enough to go around. But the art is serviceable. That's exactly the word I'd use for it. I mean, I've certainly seen much worse. It's just not my exact cup of tea. Although this panel right here, I really, some of it I really like. And can we all agree that it is only logical that if you're a native of Mercury, of course your hair will be made from flames. And if you're a native of the Centauri colony, your skin's going to be blue and you're going to have a sagittal crest. It's axiomatic. But serviceable would be the point. And you know what? I thought it was, until I reread it, somebody mentions it later about how Taserface's armor resembles Iron Man's, and it does, but it was done fairly subtly. I'm not gonna flog a dead horse, y'all. This guy's pencils are just not my cup of tea, but that is not to imply that they're bad. And I'm just gonna have to go straight down the middle with the 2.5.
Fair enough.
All right, 2.5. Yet another serviceable. A lot of serviceable tonight for this book. Let's see. I guess nostalgia doesn't raise the grade in everyone's
Only takes you
eyes.
so far, yeah.
So Raj, do you have to agree with the serviceable score, or do you have to go a little bit higher? What say you, sir?
Well, you know, let me take it from this perspective. You know, I'm one of those. I'm a Bronze Age baby, right? I like those action comics that have, you know, that intrigue, that sort of. At that point, you started multiple issue stories, etc., right? And you know, I do think, and this is where I give where I have a problem with it, right? That he has, as far as poses and the action, the way that it's portrayed, it's out there, it's in your face, it's very dramatic, it's very, there are a lot of onomatopoeia, as you can see, you know, a lot of bigger panels. There's lots of different size panels depending on what he wants to emphasize. Like here, this is like a modern cover right here, right? I mean, it's like a guy, he's just posing there, he's introducing, you see the whole armament, the cape, the whole bit, you know, pretty good. I see where Simeon is going. I mean, there's something about his pencils which they're just not that crisp. They're just a little bit wispy. I don't know if that's a real adjective for them, but they do have that kind of, they don't exude the power that I wish they did. You know, the cover was a little bit different because of, you know, there's a different dynamic with one picture versus, you know, following a storyline. But look here, you know, lack of backgrounds. Again, that's the stuff that drives me. You know, very, you know, kind of out of focus backgrounds. But then you have like this one here, which I think is well inked. When the transformation panel there, you know, well inked. It shows a good little power there. Some of the facials is also like really weird. You know, here he looks almost evil. Charlie 27. Look, it's just over exaggerated there. Again, I'm not crazy about it, but you know, some of these poses and some of the action panels are just well done. They do flow to a good degree. Notice here that everything that is a retelling is in flame, okay? So that you can tell that it's different from the incontinuity part. And I thought that was a nice touch, you know? It comes from this brazier or whatever this smoker Yondu has here. And you know, Simeon's right, the fin kind of is shorter or pointier or a little bit more obtuse, or it kind of is everywhere. It's not consistent. But that being said, I still think that the figures themselves, to a good degree, are well done. They do show a power. I don't like the facial expressions for the most part, but this last panel here, this last page, is what upticked it from average right here. Because when you see that coming at you, all right, when you see that coming at you, all those figures, and they're in different poses, different action sequences, in other words, at different moments of action, some flying from the back, some the leader standing in the front and being, you know, circled by her lieutenants. That kind of gave it a half point to me. So I gave this a 3.
3, barely above serviceable. Oh, got some bad marks in the interiors tonight. But I guess 3's not bad. It's a little bit of an average, right?
So, not as good as I wish it was.
But in this company, you know, that's an awful score. So let's see what I have to say about this. Now I'm going to try to share this screen again because it's very hard to hold that thing up. So let me try this again. So excuse me while this goes nuts. Oops. Okay, seems to be working. Now let's get this pulled up. Hey, there we go. All right. Now I'll just go over a few things. You've already said most of it. Yes, Charlie's face does look pretty bad here, but he's being mischievous here, right? So I really like the art within this book. I'm gonna have to defer with my my learned colleagues here. I think this guy is a great interior artist, and oh, great, here he goes again. Sorry, this thing likes to give ads. So first thing I noticed about this was his faces. He does a ton of very articulate faces. When there's a lot of close-ups, I think it's when he does his best work. It loses a little bit at distance. He gets a lot more vague with the stuff at distance, but you know, that's kind of to be expected. I don't. I think it works within. He's really good at drawing action scenes. He's good at giving people expressions that are done just blank. I did like this little fire effect, like from the spirit quest they go on to, and like big panels like that. I think it just looks great. That's what I think action comics should look like. I'm trying to find. I think it's more of earlier stuff. I was going to find you some good up close faces. I think it was much earlier. So let me go back to. Oops, not there. Page. I'm trying to remember what it was. Sorry, I'm sitting here just going through stuff. Yeah, a lot of onomatopoeia, a lot of explosions. Page of Ace, yeah, it is some subtle look to Iron Man here, but I don't know, I don't think it's tastefully done. I don't like that big, stupid ponytail thing he's got going on, but I don't know. I think it's just really solid and well drawn throughout for the most part. The only thing it kind of put off me a little bit, I mean, look at Yondu's face there. That's really good. Was a little bit of the muted coloring once again that seemed to follow it from the cover for some reason. And yeah, this guy doesn't like drawing backgrounds. There are so many of these like non-backgrounds in there. It's not even funny. In fact, it's much more common to see blank than anything back there. It's almost like a Coletta special or something. But I mean, that looks great. It shows pain, anguish. I think there's a lot to like within here, and I would definitely read read a book just that he drew just because I like it so much. I think it fits their look real well. Yeah, there's a little bit of fin action here that's gotta be a hard thing to keep always the same looking though. It's kind of an annoying thing to draw, I'm sure. So I don't know. I kind of dig it. I'm gonna give this a 4. I think it's one of the stronger aspects of the book. Actually, I don't know. I just like it. A lot of what I said about the cover kind of goes within because it's the same guy and all that. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4. I think it's really solid.
Wow.
4. Incorrect again, sir.
Well, now is your time to rebut. So, Mr. Miracle, give us the hoedown, as it were, on the interior.
How could you give this a 4? Like, honestly, I can count on one hand the amount of panels that actually have something in the background. Other than that, it's just blue, yellow, blue. Anatomy is all over the place. Tons of wonky poses. Tons of like really obscure, like off-putting panel shots. Even that one you're saying, like, oh, look at how good Yondu's face is with the half face. That half face, they do that because they're lazy. It's a lot harder to actually make a whole face than it is to just do a half face. Because when you do a whole face, you have to make things look in proportion. When you do a half face, you just whatever. Tons of people that just cut off everywhere, filling up panels. That's lazy because he doesn't want to draw hands. He doesn't want to draw. I don't know, the other half of people's faces. No backgrounds. Like, oh, see that little background there? It has some like stars. That's a good background. And about 3 pages later, we get some more stars for background, right? Like, so I thought he probably put a lot of time into the cover, probably most of his time, because he sure didn't bother with backgrounds. I kind of like the little where he's taking those panels, like the classic Guardians kind of panels, and redoing them. But then, that's okay. That's cool. Even Korvac sucks. Yeah, man. I'm not digging it. I was okay with his cover a little bit, but I think I was just like, okay. Once I got a few pages deep into this, I was getting pretty tired of this whole zing, zing, zing lines into the middle backgrounds. That's all he does again and again and again. Look, that like look where it's like, surprise, and like cartoons, it makes it look like that. Everybody's surprised. Da da, like in the center of the thing. But there's like, look at so many of them. That's that same panel, that same lines just going in the background. Lines. He's super lazy. Don't like it. I was much more underwhelmed when I do my grades. I try and look at the cover and then be like, okay, I'm writing my grades down, and then I'll look at the interior and then I'll be like, damn, and I'll look at the cover again and be like, nope, I already put the grade down for the cover, but now I'm starting to see a few things that are pissing me off. And yeah, Valentino, he really, really lost me here. I'm glad he never became anything. Oh, And then let's end on our last panel, right, with Stark in formation, which is exactly how we started this whole book from the cover, right? So you probably spent a lot of time on this one too, covering up a lot of hands. Again, with that stripy back for it. Right, that's what I'm talking about. So, yeah. Not impressed, Mr. Valentino. And only gave your interior 1.5.
Ooh.
Ouch,
Ooh,
ouch. That matches the
harsh.
story grade. My goodness.
Harsh.
This has been a bad run for you tonight. Well, that's all of our scores. It's time to turn over the chat. Do you agree with my high marks or a little more of the doldrum marks Mr. Miracle's floating around with down there? What say you, chat? Let us know down there, and we will tabulate your scores shortly.
I just assumed that he used the entire background budget of the issue on the cover.
Yeah, it looks to me like Miracle's got a good point, because it really bothered me when I was like, man, this panel would look a lot better like with something in the background to give you a little bit more depth and perspective. And it was almost like Carmine Infantino in that Nova series, where I don't think I saw a building in the whole metropolis. But here it wasn't that bad. But yeah, I mean,
you look through that comic, Roger, and you see how many of those backgrounds are nothing but hash line stripes into the center. That's
no, yeah, I saw it. I saw
a lot
it.
of that hospital green color background.
Yeah, it didn't bother me quite as much as you, but yeah, you're right. This is very lazy stuff here, you know, and honestly, it detracted from my score, because you can tell that it was a distraction. You could tell it was laziness, and when something like that happens, it affects my enjoyment of the comic, you know. And that wispy kind of look, to me, it just doesn't fit. I think this is a team which has been through incredible turmoil and survival, and it should be much more hardened. It shouldn't be, you know, so like, you know, it's kind of like, it's almost like everybody's a phantom on some panels, you know. And I didn't appreciate that. But the panels that were good were just so darn good that I gave it a bitter score.
Fair enough. There were certain panels you liked a lot, right?
Yeah, certain panels that were really well done. That the story, you know, again, story element fusion of art and story is important to me, and some of them were spot on. When you think about the subplots and how they drew it out, and how that art accentuated that. But
even the one panel you were talking about where Starhawk's changing into Alita.
Yeah.
And like when Starhawk changes and you look at his face, is all like, I'm changing. And then when Alita's face pops up, she looks like she's, you know, getting ready to give someone a head. Right? Like it's so dumb. Like why can't Alita make her like a angry face? She doesn't have to come up like
yeah. Unlike Genome, I wasn't crazy about his faces really. They were just too over stylized for me. But
yeah, I didn't like his faces. And zero shading in this whole thing, man. Like even the inker, like there's no shading.
Yeah.
Like we talked about lots of books that have over shading. Well, this one goes the opposite way. Like he outlines everything in black, and that's it. Like there's no shading.
Yeah.
I haven't read the series.
The colorist didn't do them any favors either. It was very weak colors.
Yeah. Again, 90s comic. I don't know if they got the premium paper. I don't have the actual issue.
But I haven't read this series in so long. I can't remember if the rest of it looks like that. So this almost reeks to me of like a really close deadline. It's like, look, you got like 20 days to put this book together, guys. Maybe that was some of it. So I had to go look through some of the issues if he did the same thing with the backgrounds and all that. But
I'm 100% sure like Jim Valentino is not busy. You know what I mean? Like he had time to do a proper issue.
Okay, Matt, could you give us something that's not divisible by pi, please? Is that a 2 or is that a 2.5? I guess that's a 2.5, Gino.
Yeah, that's the numbers I'm coming up with right now. Let's look at 2.5 from everyone in the chat.
Totally serviceable, down the middle serviceable. Yeah.
Looks like I was the only one who gave this one really high marks this evening. Oh well, must be the
Okay.
fanboy blinders, I guess. I wasn't really a big fan of the series when I was reading it back then. There were so many other things I liked better. It just I still happen to have it.
So now that you're older, you like it more? Like 13-year-old me would probably be better with this comic than 45-year-old me.
Yeah, 13-year-old me would have ate this up with a spoon.
Yeah, right. Like I'd be like, cool, guys in space, a guy who's a plebluvian. Right?
I think my younger self didn't really like the characters too much. I think it was my thing. So I was like, there's no like, there's no broody Punisher in here, or there's no mega OP friggin' Superman or Hulk. So it's like, they're just kind of there, So I think that's why I kind of ignored him back then for more flash and less substance,
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of substance here, but I mean, it's for the average 13-year-old, it's probably a little more than they need. So
honestly, these guys would still be in comic book obscurity if it wasn't for that movie.
Well,
They
most
would
of them
be.
are still, except for Yondu, and I guess Starhawk appeared as Sylvester Stallone, but
That was
I guess
low,
Martin did too. Martin X did too, I guess. But
oh yeah, I think Charlie was in there too, but he
Charlie
was
was in there, too.
Ving Rhames played him. He was
Yeah.
only in the very end at the funeral
that's
scene.
right. That's right.
Okay.
I just read that today actually.
But I mean, I'm just talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy in general.
yeah, they were.
Like these guys, they were never super popular. When they first announced they were going to make a Guardians movie, everybody was like, Whovians?
Yeah.
I was surprised they did them or Ant-Man. I was like, what? Who are they? Where are they picking these people from? There's so many more popular characters, but
Ant-Man, I could see. And that's kind of cute for kids, right? So that one kind of worked.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the
That was-
movie, so but I'm
I
not
love
really a
those Ant-Man movies. Paul Rudd's pretty funny enough.
I'm not really an MCU fan, but anyway,
What?
movies. I'm ambivalent about them. I don't know.
MCU, like
There's too much comedy in there for my taste. That's the problem. I am so sick of the levity. You got 1 minute of action and then gotta have a laugh. Gotta have a laugh to break that tension. They can build no tension in those movies whatsoever. Even the villain will be cracking jokes. It's just lame. I don't like those.
Did you not see Infinity War?
No, I didn't watch the.
You didn't watch Endgame?
Oh no, I didn't watch Endgame. I watched Infinity War. Yeah.
Yeah, and Endgame was a pretty dark for.
I'm
MCU
boycotting
movie.
Marvel movies now. So, but anyway, so I wasn't gonna watch Endgame. Where was Warlock? Where was he? Why do you got to change it and make another freaking character that nobody likes the freaking savior of everybody? No, I don't think so. So they're not getting my money. I wouldn't watch it for free. But that's just my jaded self. So that's a story for another day. But
Yeah.
All right, let's keep focused.
all right. So speaking of obscurity, let's talk about the concept. What was the whole concept behind this book? Roger, why don't you go ahead and lead us off here and tell us what was Marvel thinking when they did this series?
Well, that's a very good question, Gino. Again, at this point, Marvel, you sort of saw the first weaknesses, chinks in the armor, and a lot of their titles were starting to slide a bit, and so they tried to infuse some new concepts into the Marvel universe. As we stated before, Ghost Rider was rebooted. Matt is on here. That's one of his favorite characters. We got the New Warriors to sort of try to bring in a younger crowd, something so that they could associate with. And then you had Sleepwalker, which was kind of more of a darker, more mature, ahead of its time kind of series. And then you had this, which was, to me, was more a nostalgic kind of throwback series, where we're focusing on obscure characters, but one that are based more on action and art driven, and having ties to the 20th century, but in the 31st century environment. Okay, so you didn't have the continuity issues with this series that you had with the others, although Marvel at this point was kind of like loosey-goosey on continuity as it was. But in this one, you had a lot more freedom to use characters or versions of characters and not have any repercussions that other editors would start calling you on the phone and say, what did you do to my Wolverine? That kind of thing. So the concept, I think, was a good one. it was a little bit easier to swallow editorially because of, again, the characters were dead in the water anyway. If it bombed, so be it. And if it did well, then we caught lightning in a bottle, that kind of thing. But I do like, because I am a huge fan of these characters, right? Especially, again, Charlie 27, Nikki, Alita. These characters are not fleshed out very well during their runs on the various titles, Marvel Presents and so forth. And I was hungry to see how it is they could be best used in their own series by a dedicated team. I'm talking about art, writing team, that kind of thing. So to me, the concept was better than average, only because it let me have a bit of my youth when I was in the 70s, but still, the art and the production and there was a lot of new stories to be told, because although they relate back to the 20th century with all the different aspects, they still are a future team. And, the time travel was not really that big in this series. They generally stuck to their own 31st century adventures. Better than average concept. I wish that, that it had a little bit stronger art. I wish another creator would have done, like a Jim Starlin on this team would have been off the charts good. He has such a good concept about space and the different villains that would later come on were very Starlin-esque, but they weren't Starlin-esque, if you know what I mean. They were just sort of pseudo Starlin-esque. So again, I think the concept was good, but it could have been so much better with a better creative team and with a little more emphasis on the, not so much going back to the 20th century, but sort of the ramifications of the 20th century would have been, to me, a little bit more, a better focus. They use that 20th century crutch just a little too much here. So overall, the concept, I gave it better than serviceable, a 3.
All right, 3 from Mr. Medarog. So I guess that'll lead into me next. That kind of segues that way. So doing things in different order this evening. So what did I think about the concept? Well, this is the weakest aspect for me. This is 90s predatory comic books. It was the shotgun method. Take any existing character or make a new one, just throw it out there, and people will buy. I don't blame them a bit. I mean, if they're making money, they're making money. Actually, it wasn't too predatory until I started getting too much of the variants and all that other nonsense, but that's a story for another day. This is, at the end, just a revamping of some characters. They probably had some artists sitting around or a little extra budget. It's like, we need book number 87 for the monthly, so let's go ahead and bring out some characters we haven't seen in a while. So who's not being used? It's like, it's Guardians of the Galaxy. All right, put them out there. Put them on a book. And it's still going to sell. Probably sold 500,000 units. I don't know. But, I mean, so it's hard to blame them for doing it. It's just, I don't know, it's bereft of all imagination. I mean, it was kind of cool that they did a lot of tie-in with the past, or the current Marvel 616 or whatever. But I don't know, there wasn't anything new or exciting about this whatsoever. I think the Starhawk Alita thing might have been kind of cool. I mean, I didn't really seen that before, at least in Marvel. So that was all right. But I mean, none of the other people really breaking new ground. I mean, you got the fast girl and the archer and the strong guy and the couple of energy projectors. So nothing really too amazing. I mean, these guys are in the 31st century, but it doesn't matter. It's the same kind of, they still fight villains and everything else. I mean, there's a little bit of technology in these books, like spaceships more than that, but nothing more than you'll see in like any spacefaring kind of comic, like a Silver Surfer or even some, like Iron Man's or whatever. So, I mean, it's just, it's right down the middle. I mean, it's cool that they actually cared enough about the characters to give them a pretty rich backstory, and they gave them a shot at being a decent title. They didn't put absolute garbage people on them. So, but yeah, there's nothing new here. It's just rehashing an old thing. So I'll give it serviceable 2.5 because at least they did it justice. They didn't give it trash. Like if New Warriors, I think was kind of a trash like introduction to the comic book world. I didn't like the way they did that at all. It's no way I know it was targeted at a younger demographic, but So they did a little more justice, I think, to these guys, and at least in my opinion, they didn't let them down too badly for first issue. So I was gonna give it a 2.5. Like I said, throw the wall, gets the wall, see if it sticks. That was the comic book credo from 85 to about 92. So 2.5.
2.5.
Fair.
Mhm.
Fair.
So Miracle, did I hit the nail on the head, or was I woefully inaccurate? Was I a Carpenter worthy of John Carpenter? You tell me.
Somebody's nailed head, that's for sure. Concept of this book. Well, you did kind of hit the nail on the head when you said, it's nothing new here. Like this, been done again and again and again and again. Even like the Guardians of the Galaxy, been done. The 90s were a weird time, man. They were throwing out tons of books. They kind of went up and down with those number ones, right? Like, couldn't get new number ones in the 60s, in the late 70s when they were allowed to do it again, or not late 70s, but in the late 60s when they were allowed to do it again. Also, you get this big explosion of all these new books. Then in the 80s, they kind of settled down with that. And then in the 90s, they just exploded with a whole bunch of number ones again. And up until the comic book crash. But books like this, exactly why the comic book crash happened, because they were crap. They were just, the art wasn't that great. The storylines were rather thin, and it just been done, right? Like you weren't wanting to pick up these number ones again because it's like, again with this. But they would just pump them out, print them. I certainly, when was this? 1990. I probably wasn't collecting comic books at this time, but I don't remember them really. I knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were later, but really not until that movie came out did they ever like show up in my brain as any kind of comic book character. And yeah, been done. I do like the fact that they're from the future and they're all from different colonies of Earth. I thought that was kind of cute, but again, that concept isn't Valentino's, right? That concept didn't come out of this book. And yeah, I thought it was rather weak, man. So I ended up giving the whole thing a 1.5. Concept-wise, been done. I wrote that in my notes. Been done.
There's no denying that. That's for sure. that was the 90s, like the late 80s, 90s in a nutshell. Just I don't know. There was no unused characters laying around because they knew anything they put out there was going to sell. So, and really, what's your take on this? Was this a worthy reboots of a series? Was it just predatory practice? What say you, sir?
I think y'all have pretty much stated it that let's put another book on the stands. These characters aren't doing nothing. They've been around a while, sure, so they have established histories, but no one's really done anything with them, and no one's gonna, let's say Valentino went out there and shot the moon, and it was a 1 million a month seller, well and good. And if it didn't sell anything, well, who cares? And I think probably hardly anyone, most of these characters, I haven't seen a whole lot of them in the last 10, 12 years that I've been back in the game. And so they've, by and large, fallen by the wayside. Somewhere at Comixology, there is a bean counter that goes over the numbers every month. And he is going to say, damn, 1990s Guardians of the Galaxy sold 2 online copies this month. What's going on with the world? So,
oh man,
I'm going to stick with the straight up serviceable. I have to give this a 2.5.
All right, 2.5, Mr. Unruly. Chat, why don't you go ahead and start throwing your grades out there while we hash this out a little bit? But yeah, man, it's like, look, comics was very insular back then. There was no internet. There was very little networking going on, and still no one was talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy. They were talking about New Warriors way more than they were the Guardians. This did not light the comic book world on fire.
Definitely, I knew who Night Thrasher and Speedball were, but I wasn't thinking about these guys at all. But I mean, it's the 90s, man. They put out number ones just to put out number ones because everybody would grab them up. Oh, this one's going to be worth $1 million later. It's a number one, right?
Yeah.
They just threw them out there again and again.
Yeah.
Supply and demand. And once again, who could blame the comic industry? Because they're making money hand over fist. Why don't you keep doing it? But then you realize they cut their own throat by doing it that way. But whatever.
Yeah, Yeah, this was
I
the
mean,
first.
comic runs back then were in the millions.
Oh yeah, it was
Well,
crazy.
some
Rob
were,
Liefeld's on
some were.
commercials and
Somewhere. I mean,
Somewhere. I think this one was more probably in the 200,000 or 300,000, but
probably
but it
no,
didn't get.
I mean, at number one, released by Marvel in
probably half a
'90,
million.
that,
Probably
that 500,650,000. And I mean, if you
Somewhere.
look at comic runs now, new comic books come out in runs of what, 100,000 if they're really popular.
this beats
Yeah.
the top 10 probably of what's out there now because like
Oh,
even
no,
Spider-Man's
certainly,
like
yeah.
80,000. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. You have to also remember that, for example, Ghost Rider went to a second printing. New Warriors went to a second printing.
Yeah,
This
with the
one-
gold cover.
Mhm.
They had the gold. This one did not. Okay?
Yes.
But Ghost
Right.
Rider was popular too. Ghost Rider was incredibly
very
popular at the time.
So it's what David said is spot on. This was a number one. It was, everybody bought it up because it was a number one issue. But when the characters were not nearly as relatable to the younger audience as New Warriors, and they didn't have the edge that Ghost Rider had. So it kind of just fell in the meh category.
Yeah.
But somebody like me who really enjoy these characters, I bought it every single month. But I was in the when this was canceled, I think it was like it went down to like 60,000. I mean, it went down to nothing back then.
Amazing.
Well, the chat was saying like 62 runs in that, or issues in that run.
Yeah, 62
So that went
plus
on
some
for a while.
annuals. Yeah.
I think I clicked this one like I did New Warriors, like issue 10 or 12, and I think I just petered off after that.
Yeah.
Which I have very little because of Taser Race 3.0. I like that. Getting some grades going in there.
Darkhawk was another one in the same time frame, but that had a lot of appeal because that had a lot of Spider-Man origin-ish aspects to it. The teenager angst, problems with parents, problems with school, with girls, that kind of level. But this one, it didn't really have a lot of relatability unless you were an old fogey like me who wanted to recapture those 70s. And that was a fairly niche at the time.
See, I thought Darkhawk was kind of cool, but I hated the character. Like they made him like a little too Shazam-y, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about. But so a lot of potential in the 90s, but a lot of it was just unrealized, just formulaic, And this one's the formula. It's basically the weaker Avengers in space in the future, and there's nothing to draw interest there really for a huge audience,
Pretty good analogy, actually. I would agree with that.
All right, so we got a few grades in there. So let's see what we got here. We got a 3, 2.5, and I think I get another 3. So we're looking at a 3 right now, guys. So unless we got any more grades, 3.
3. Incorrect.
It's Darkhawk Facebook thinks he is a god, huh? Well, they never did say where his gem came from, did they? Was it another like Sidorak gem or something? Well, I don't remember. I didn't read the series long enough to figure out where the gem came from.
Yeah, it was supposedly
That's the
there
gem
was
that-
a bunch of Darkhawks that were from different dimensions and so forth, and they had some kind of protector role or something. Yeah, it got really convoluted there at the end of Darkhawk. Yeah.
God, I'm glad I never read this series.
Well,
Yeah,
I bought, like I said, the first couple just because, but
I read it. I read it, Dave, and yeah. I mean, that's one I really don't want to reread. This one, the Guardians of the Galaxy, is one I want to reread because there actually are good story arcs spread out through it. Not many, but there are
Right.
some. But Darkhawk, honestly, there was like that. It seemed so, it seemed like such, the crossovers were so based on trying to make a quick buck. Venom, you had Spider-Man in there. When that early they start going to those kinds of desperate measures, it's time to move on.
Right.
that's a good point there, Dave. Enrique, how he thinks the series might have sparked the 2099 series. That did come out not too long afterwards, and the difference was 2099 was kind of interesting, though. I thought there were some pretty cool stories there, like
Yeah.
2099 and all that.
Yeah.
So not everything in the 90s was bad, but yeah, there was a lot to be reprehensible. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to our overall grades, and we kind of revamped this a little bit because it's kind of starting to drag on a little bit. So I'm basically just gonna call out each person. They're gonna throw the grade in a really quick synopsis, and we're gonna move right on through this, and then get on to our closing arguments. So Dave, we'll have to start with you, my friend. Why don't you go ahead and give us your overall score?
Quick synopsis and an overall score. Overall, 1.5.
Siri, can you translate that, please? Excrement. Okay. Unruly. What say you, sir? What is your overall score?
Well, I think my residual affection for the original characters might be coloring this a bit, but I think that the sum is greater than the whole. It's greater. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I'm going to give it a 3.5 overall.
What?
Wow.
I mean, okay.
Wow. Simeon.
All right, 3.5. So what say you, Roger? What is your finals tally on this book?
Well, I think Simeon pretty much summed it up for me as well. I think this is one of those holistic type of comics because of the way that it strikes me from my childhood. I know it's tainted. I know it in the fiber of my being that it's tainted, but I still enjoyed it. I would still read this comic. I would still buy this comic. I would still want to know what the Stark are up to and what the plot lines are. Simeon hit it on the nose. 3.5 for me.
All right, 3.5 from Roger. Well, guess what, guys? I have to concur. I actually had 3.5 as well. It was close to a 4, but then the concept really drug it down, and then some parts of the story I just didn't care for that much. So I gave it a 3.5 as well. I mean, it was a 90s book. It had a lot going wrong with it, but I think for the most part it hit on more cylinders than misfired. So I gave that 3.5.
The number 4 should not have come out of anybody's mouth this entire time.
Well, the number 1.5 should never have come either, Dave, and you did that one.
I thought I was going to be generous. I'm like, there's no way these guys like this book.
Some of us were excited going in. Like, I had not read this since I picked it up off the newsstand all those years ago, so it was kind of cool to revisit the book and see what my eyes thought about it nowadays.
Really cheesy dialogue just threw me off a lot.
Well, Dave, the first time I read it, I would have been in total agreement with you. I was just sitting here thinking, man, this is just not good. But when I reread it, and it just literally the whole thing grew on me.
Man, I don't get it.
I don't get it. But I didn't
grow on me. I read it twice because I was like making notes and stuff, and I was like, no, still not happy with this book.
All right.
That's why we love you, Dave Miracle. That's why we love you, because as I said in my summation of you go right to the point. You don't have hairs on your tongue, as we say in Spanish. You tell it like it is. You stick to your guns. No matter what we say, you're right and we're wrong. I respect that.
That's right.
There's no waffling here in Graders
No
Notes.
waffling.
None
whatsoever.
All right, so we got 2 more quick little things, and then we're gonna go ahead and sign off. The first thing is we gotta pick next book. So, Dave, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, so I'd like to clear the palette after that. Guardians of the Galaxy pick. I got 2 classic books here by 2 classic artists. And we're gonna let the chat pick which one they would like to see us grade. So this one's really relevant because it's got a movie coming out. Both these books have reprints, so if anybody wants to get one from their LCS, you can go get the $1 reprint on it. And how about Eternals #1?
Ooh.
Right, Jack Kirby, super classic. I don't know if we've done any Kirby art in this in Graders Notes yet, have we?
I don't think we have.
I don't think we've done a Kirby book yet.
Yeah, you're right.
We did
Or
Avengers 71. I can't remember who did that one.
no,
that was
Buscema.
Buscema. That was Buscema.
That's right.
Okay, and then alternately from this classic artist, let's do, and I did pick this one just to bug David.
Ooh.
Wolverine #1 from Frank Miller.
Oh.
There is also a reprint of this one, right? So you can go to your LCS and get one of these. These 2 are both originals, but
Hey, Kenny is in the chat. How you doing, Kenny?
all right.
Glad you're
That
alive.
Wolverine is from when Frank Miller actually took his time and cared.
Yeah, this was one of his first deals, right? And this was Jack making a big comeback for Marvel Comics.
New Gods. Excuse me.
All right, so post your decision, chat. Let us know which one you wanted to see us review. We'll give you a few moments here to suss over that, and then we'll get back to the end of the show. So
All right.
some interesting picks there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
can't go wrong with either one. Can't go wrong.
He picked the Wolverine just to bug me. He knows me and Wolverine.
I know, I just said. Well, yeah,
You know, the bad part is I shouldn't hate Wolverine so much just because there's so much history behind him. You know, Marvel, because he was so popular, he got so much attention story wise. So you know so much about the character. It's just, God, I couldn't stand him.
Maybe this book will change your mind. Maybe you'll. Well, who we get? We got lots of votes coming.
Wolverine, Eternals. Okay, so Eternals is ahead so far. Let's see if anybody else. Oh, Kenny is in there voting.
Okay.
Wolverine. Oh man, we're tied.
Had to do his part. Oh, we are tied. We need tiebreakers, people.
We need a tiebreaker. Come on. Let's go.
What do you guys vote?
Speaking for the ape population, I vote Wolverine.
Oh no.
Well, I'll do Eternals, but that's just me.
You vote for Eternals?
You know, I have never read that Wolverine book, and it was all the rage back when I was collecting. So.
Wow.
Wolverine.
Man, that's so hard. I'm still missing that #1 from that Wolverine limited series.
Oh, really?
Well, it was too expensive back then to buy. I don't know what it costs now, but
still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's a reprint.
They have the reprint.
Right.
I'd like to shoot. I'd like to tackle that Eternals. I guess I wouldn't mind. You know, I kind of have a predisposition. I'm not going to say what it is right now, based on that Eternals book. So I'll say Eternals.
Okay, so that's tie now. Are we tied? So I'm back to the same thing.
Well, look, there is no bigger Kirby fan in the world than me. And there's a reason why Eternals was a $1 book for 3 freaking decades.
I think, actually, I think Wolverine
If
won.
that.
Hold on. Let's see. 1, 2.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna pick Wolverine then.
5, 6. So yeah, actually you win. I think. Let's see. 1, 2,
That really just convinced me. I was going for it, but
6, 5. So Wolverine.
Wolverine wins.
All right. Last chance saloon for the chat, but it looks like it's gonna be Wolverine.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Actually, the chat is in 4-3 as well. So that's fair.
How many Wolverine books are we gonna do? My gosh.
all of them.
We've done a lot.
Gino is gnashing his teeth as we speak.
McFarlane's Wolverine. We did Hulk 181 Wolverine. X-Men 1 with Wolverine all over the cover. Oh my goodness.
Man. Hey, we mimic the society here, and he's everywhere, or he was before he died or whatever.
Now, if we can do the Garth Ennis freaking Punisher Wolverine, that's different. I'll be happy to do that one because that was cool.
Well, your pick will be coming up in a few months.
Yeah, and Rolly's laughing because he's the one that sent it to me. never forget to thank you for that, by the way. All right, so we got Wolverine miniseries coming up here. So be there or be square reprints to be had out there. If you have never read it and want to read along with us, I'll have to order it myself. I'm sure it can be found also on digital, so no problem there. So please join us in 2 weeks when we do that. So, all right, you got to admit, it's a cool cover, and it's very well drawn. And so, what are you going to say? Even I can't deny that.
We will see, Gino. We will see.
We'll see what you say, yeah.
But, so anyway, let's go ahead and wrap up by letting everyone know what each of your channels is doing real fast. So, Roger, why don't we start with you? What's going on in the world of Metarog in the near future?
Well, I'm going to be finished. I'm going to be doing part 2 of my Amazing Heroes complete set, probably Saturday, because I don't have a support video to make. It's a little slow on the contest front. So I'm going to be doing part 2 on Saturday and probably part 3 on Tuesday. And then, of course, you have the roundup next Thursday.
All right. Short and sweet. Mr. Simeon, what's going on in Simeon land?
All right. So my contest, I was supposed to draw the winners at the beginning of the month. Let me apologize to everyone. I will get that taken care of probably 2 weekends from now. At some point I'll post on IG and YouTube the list of everybody that's entered and give everyone, a week or so to let me know if I missed anyone, and then I'll get the winners out there. But I'm sorry, y'all. I've just been literally overwhelmed at work. I got to wrap this up and be ready to start the next one.
Hey, understood. Real life's gotta take precedence. So.
Yep. Yeah, especially in this environment, we can totally understand.
Dave, what say you? What's going on in Miracle Land?
I say no excuses and really draw that.
He gives nobody a break here, really. Nobody.
No quarter asked
no
or given.
comic, no person.
Right. Quarter ass. Gonna put out another undervalued spec video tomorrow, right? Do the quarantine edition of the book there. Yeah, I've been stuck in the house for a couple days now. Wife's working at home. I'm working at home, organize comics. So definitely take lots of time to do some YouTube videos. So we'll put out one of those tomorrow.
Cool. Look forward.
I myself am doing more stuff at home right now too. So hopefully I can actually put out some stuff. I've been really sparse this last week. I think I'm recharging my battery some. But there'll be more stuff on regular schedule here coming up in the near future. Got some more music reviews to do. Got some more internet or interview possibly hits, but more on that in the future if I actually get things squared away. Just standard stuff for me. Reviewing anything that moves and or is put to film. So next comic book cover of the week, I should put that out tomorrow probably. And yeah, so just kind of the same old. Oh, I did get something kind of new that's going to help expand my horizons a bit. I did get my wireless lav mics in so I can actually record on the move. So who knows what's going to happen here in the near future in the Genome production studio. So we'll see. But yeah, so it's been kind of quiet around the channel, but it will pick up. So stay tuned for that. So, all right. So I guess we'll go ahead and say good evening to the chat. I really want to extend my appreciation for joining us this evening. I know there was some confusion on the thumbnail. YouTube has not made this any easier. I never had such a problem before when it was Google Hangouts, but man, it's so cumbersome now. But so thanks for hanging in with us and following me around. I appreciate all my Creators Notes compadres here, especially Mr. Simeon, who once again pinch hit on the short notice. Appreciate that.
I enjoy it, y'all. Thank you.
And so stay tuned for the next one coming up here in 2 weeks. Once again, Wolverine #1 for the miniseries. Iconic cover from a semi-iconic book. So unless you guys have anything else, I'll go ahead and close her down now.
Nope. See everybody next time. Thanks for watching, guys.
2 weeks on Miracles Channel.
That's right.
All right. Stay tuned for good times. All right. Thanks again for everybody for watching. And until then, this is Genome and the Creators Notes crew.